and Larry, please come to the podium and do your thing, and then we'll come back. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Faith United Church is we're connecting with Dr. Bhargava. We're going to learn a lot about physical health, but Faith United Church, if you're interested, can provide spiritual health. And it can't be a bad thing when you have enough faith to deal with sorrow and to deal with stress. So you're welcome to come back any Sunday at 10:30 to join the service. And between the physical health and the spiritual health, you're bound to improve. Thank you. Dan's a lot more winded than I am, so I'll stay beside him here.
I'm just saying that this is another great turnout. I mean, for a day like today, maybe it's a good idea that it was a little bit cloudy outside because everybody decided to come here instead of go outside and do their gardening. I would like to extend my welcome and congratulations to the Bhargava team for another successful Heart Care Public Education Forum. Let's all give them and their hard work a round of applause. And welcome to all of you, because if it wasn't for you, I couldn't thank the Bhargava team just a second ago for a successful Heart Care Forum. So let's give all of you a round of applause. Okay. Normally at this point, I just give a few directions as to where the washrooms are and so on. This year, I'll just let you know that the washrooms are out in the hall. And any other questions that you might have, our wellness education team back at the back table should be able to give you the answers, okay? And I don't know about you, but I do feel that these annual Heart Care Forums are an integral part of our community. In this day and age where micromanagement makes everyone's job like only a very tiny piece in a giant puzzle, nobody, now I'm sounding like a bad boy commercial, but nobody can see the bigger picture and put all of those little tiny pieces together so that we can gain a deeper understanding and fuller understanding of our overall health. And I would suggest that these forums do just that. We're lucky as a community in this area to have them. Now, I want to know that, let the Bhargava team know that I was listening last year, okay? And I'll end my welcome by giving you an example of how listening to all the little pieces can be helpful. With the pieces I learned last year, I was able to come up with a wonderful, heart-friendly game plan that not only helps people lose weight, keep it off, and not gain it back, but also this game plan gets rid of fat and strengthens your heart. That game plan was born out of two little pieces last year. Deepa Bhargava gave a talk on the benefits of intermittent fasting. Shortly after that, I became familiar with Dr. Jason Fung, who works out of Toronto, who works with diabetic patients on kidney dialysis machines. I mean, these people are almost dead, and he's working with them to bring them life. I downloaded and read his book called The Obesity Code, which is a #1 bestseller. The Obesity Code also talks about intermittent fasting combined with more of a keto-type diet. So combining these tiny bits of information led me and my clients to embrace what we call the keto fasting combo. Or did you know that KFC is the secret to lasting weight loss? Sounds like a great topic for next year's Heart Forum. Risha? Is that Risha, right? Ray? Okay. That was a huge hint. Unfortunately, time does not permit me to go any further details at this time, and I haven't been formally asked to present this information here. So keep your eyes and ears open for next year, and keep your ears open to the tiny pieces of information that you might pick up for your health this year. Coffee, tea, and water are going to be available throughout the forum. Approximately 10 o'clock, the coffee and tea, and there is water over there now. And there's going to be a nutritional snack at 11:40, which was prepared by our United Church women and the wellness education team. And I'd like to give them a thank you as well for doing that. Okay? And on that note, we are truly fortunate to have an amazing heart care team of presenters here in this year's forum, led by Dr. Rakesh Bhargava, who is highly accomplished, a gold medal winning cardiologist whose extensive medical training has taken him from a university in India to Toronto General Hospital, the Mayo Clinic, and McMaster University in Hamilton. Please put your hands together one more time and help me not only welcome Dr. Rakesh Bhargava, the current Director of Heart Care Wellness Center, but also this year's entire Heart Care team of presenters. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Dan. And thank you for the Health and Wellness Committee of Faith United Church for hosting us again this year. And I would like to take this opportunity to introduce today's moderator. I'm not the moderator. Kathy Stafford is going to be our moderator. She is here somewhere. Oh, there she is. She has worked as a cardiac nurse at Lakeridge Health, Oshawa, where she not only cared for patients but mentored new staff and nursing students as well. Since 2001, she has worked at Heart Care as a research study coordinator. This was when she was working in the hospital, so she had two dual jobs, and played a critical role in research studies, and she still does that. She then retired from the hospital and devotes full-time attention to us at Heart Care, to me and my patients. She's also become a cardiac nurse specialist, as I call her, that assists with congestive heart failure and lipid clinics to provide specialized care to those patients in need. And I should tell you, it's not only Kathy, there's Carol, who's our cardiac nurse specialist. Often these patients, once one patient came to see me, and for some reason Carol was not going to be there, and after seeing me, and this was in the heart failure clinic, she said, "Am I not going to see Carol today?" I think that though she saw the cardiologist, she still missed her nurse specialist. And the same goes for Kathy. She does Holter monitor analysis at both Heart Care and IM Care, which is internal medicine care at Coburg. So in her spare time, she enjoys fundraising alongside her sister for Down syndrome research, Sir James Whitney School for Deaf, and the Hospital for Sick Kids. She's the mother of 2 boys and now a grandmother as well. She has always been known for keeping things creative and interesting with her peers. And when she was on the cardiac ward, if you were retiring or you were leaving the floor, you better be prepared, because she will create this drama that you won't believe it. And I don't think nurses will ever forget this. And she dresses them in all kind of costumes and come up with all kind of nicknames. And she's always up to something. Now, this is besides other things. She was nominated by her peers and patients for the Toronto Star's Florence Nightingale Award in 2011. She was also awarded the Heart Care Most Outstanding Cardiac Nurse of the Year in 2014. And I should say again that these nurses who were selected to get this award, I don't choose them. She got chosen, and I was so happy that she got chosen by her peers, and she was working with us at that time. So please join me in welcoming our moderator and entertainer for the day, Kathy Stafford. So you stay from here, and there you go.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. So I've had a very long drive in today from the big city of Coburg, and so I'm going to need a little bit of help from you guys to wake up this morning. So here's what we're going to do. Today, every time I say good morning, everyone, I want you to shout back, "It sure is." So here we go. Good morning, everyone. It sure is. Okay, that's good. We're going to work on that, but that's good. Now, I also want everybody to stand up. I want you to put your hands up, and I want you to high five 3 people who are standing in and around you and wish them a good morning as well. Good job, everyone. Now we're waking up. Oh, here we come. We're coming after you, Deepa. And we're still high-fiving. Funny story about high-fiving, which if there's time allotted later, I'm going to share it with you. Okay, everybody have a seat. Shake it off. Sit back, relax, have fun. We're going to have a great day today. My name is Kathy, and I'm going to be your moderator for the day. I've been asked to be on my best behavior, and I'm going to give it my best shot. I will be introducing our guest speakers today, and at the end of every presentation, there is time allotted for questions and answers. We will get through as many of them as possible. However, after our final guest speaker this afternoon, Dr. Mukesh Bhargava, I'm going to be asking the experts to come back up onto the stage, and they'll continue to answer any other burning questions you may have. And remember, knowledge is power, and we all learn from everybody else's questions and answers. So keep them coming. Heart disease is not just one of the leading causes of death in Canada, but also in the world. And heart disease is not only one of the leading causes of death in men, but also in women. And heart disease is not just one disease. It is a group of diseases that affect the circulatory and the cardiovascular system. And it causes some conditions such as high and low blood pressure. And so on that note, I would like to start the program off today by introducing our first dynamic guest speaker, Dr. Ali Andalib. I have to read his bio because it's that impressive and I don't want to miss anything. So Dr. Andalib has recently joined the cardiology group at the Oshawa Lake Ridge Health. He's also a clinical associate at the St. Michael's Hospital as an invasive cardiologist. He completed his undergraduate and medical studies at McGill University in Montreal, along with a master's degree in cardiac pharmacology at the Institut de Cardiologie de Montréal. He then moved to Boston to complete additional training in interventional cardiology at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, Harvard University. During his time there, he acted as the Assistant Research Director of the Core Angiography Lab and was involved in international research studies in cardiac interventions. He also has numerous publications in this area. He's committed to providing high-quality, evidence-based cardiac care to his patients. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Ali Andalib.
Thank you, Kathy. Good morning, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you, Dr. Bhargava, for inviting me to talk. Hopefully this won't be the last time I get an invitation. So when Dr. Bhargava called me to talk at this event, we both agreed that probably the topic of blood pressure is the one to talk about because it's such an important topic. It's probably after smoking. It's probably the number one reason that people end up with heart disease at heart clinics. So on that note, let's start the topic. Hopefully you get some little bits of information from this talk that you can sort of keep with you. So I have no disclosures relevant to this talk. So why don't we start by defining what blood pressure is? So cardiovascular system is really a simple system. You know, you got the heart, which is a pump, and you got a bunch of vessels, which is the tubing that connects the the body to the heart. You got the arterial system, the red vessels which deliver the oxygenated blood to the body, and you got the venous system, the blue vessels that bring back the blood to the heart. Now, blood pressure is really the measure of the force of the blood against the walls of the arteries. You got the systolic blood pressure, which is the higher number that you normally get when you measure the blood pressure, which is the pressure force when the heart contracts. And you have the diastolic blood pressure, which is the force of the blood when the heart relaxes. And we normally, as you know, measure these numbers in the unit of millimeters of mercury. So, having defined what blood pressure is, now let's see what we mean by when the blood pressure is high. Before we do that, it's very important to know that we got to measure blood pressure correctly. So these are from the Hypertension Canada guidelines, so we got to make sure that we're seated, the back is supported, the legs are not crossed 90 degrees, the arm is at the same level of the heart, more or less. We got the right pressure, cuff size, and we have to relax, almost meditate for 5 minutes before we measure the blood pressure so we get accurate numbers. So if this blood pressure is measured at the office with an automated device based on what has been defined in Canada for high blood pressure, if the numbers are more than 135/85, we have high blood pressure. If we have measurements by non-automated devices, then we go a little higher, 140/90 millimeters of mercury. And if you have diabetes, we have a little bit of a different numbers. 130/80 is the number that we define high blood pressure. Now, if you measure the blood pressure at home by home monitoring devices, which is, I encourage all my patients, I think a blood pressure device needs to be in every household these days, and we'll talk about that in a second. So if you measure the blood pressure at home, again, if you have an average blood pressure more than 135/85 at home, then you have high blood pressure. At the bottom, you see an ambulatory device. These are devices that, we often provide patients at the clinic or the hospital. They go home with them. They measure the blood pressure a number of times during the day and at nighttime, and then we get an average back, and if the blood pressure is more than 130/80 millimeters of mercury on average throughout the 24-hour period, then, we define high blood pressure. So look for these signs. If you're willing to buy a blood pressure monitoring device at home, I would certainly encourage you to get one. I always tell my patients, if you go to Costco, they only carry one brand. Omron is a good brand to buy. They have the gold sign from the Hypertension Canada. I have nothing to do with Omron or Costco, but that's what I tell my patients normally where to buy these devices. Look for these signs on the devices that you're going to buy to make sure that they're validated. I'll just put this slide up here. These are the numbers that they have in the United States. They're a little bit different, a little more. So we're looking for blood pressures more than 120/80, which is based on some of the research studies we have. So a lot of patients these days read information online, which I certainly encourage you to do, but we have to know where to find these information. So if you come across these numbers, 120/80, you're not wrong. It's just that, we're a little bit more lenient probably in Canada for the right reasons. Now, having defined high blood pressure, why do we care about this topic? Hypertension, so-called silent killer. I only have a couple of slides with figures. I promise I'm not going to bore you with this. This is just to say that high blood pressure is a very common condition. So if you look at these graphs, the prevalence of hypertension in adults more than 20 years of age in Canada is 25%. 25% of the population more than 20 years of age would have high blood pressure. And important to note that all of us, if we live long enough, 90% of us will develop high blood pressure at some point in our lifetime. So it's a very, very common condition, and it's a bad condition. Promise you this is the last slide with graphs. Meta-analysis is a type of studies that would allow us to combine research studies together by statistical analysis. These are studies, this is a study that had combined almost 1 million patients from various studies. So if you look at the y-axis, this is the mortality, death because of stroke. The x-axis is the blood pressure. And you can see in various age categories, as the blood pressure goes higher than 120 millimeters of mercury, the mortality goes higher with it, related to stroke. Same thing goes with ischemic heart disease, which is the heart attacks that would come, blocked coronary arteries, blocked arteries. Same thing would go with mortality related to other vascular issues as a result of high blood pressure. So blood pressure is a common condition, and it's a deadly condition. So most of the time we're not aware of it. We don't even know we have blood pressure, high blood pressure, but it's something that we should pay attention to greatly. Now, what are the causes of hypertension? Now, it's important to note that what I'm talking about here is the bread and butter so-called primary hypertension that come along. There is a certain group of patients that would have the so-called secondary hypertension, and that's because of anatomical or hormonal issues. We're not talking about them right now. We're talking about the bread and butter high blood pressure that we see out there. Hypertension is there's a genetical predisposition to it. Various genes are involved. We don't know all the genes, but there is a genetic predisposition to it, and you see that in families that they've had high blood pressure, parents, grandparents, aunts, and uncles. What are the environmental risk factors to it? Obviously lack of mobility, couch potatoes that would lead to this, starting in childhood. And alcohol is another major factor that would drive up the blood pressure, and salt. And we'll talk about those different components in a couple of minutes. So lifestyle, environmental factors are extremely important in driving up the blood pressure. So knowing that, before we get into medications, always lifestyle and health behaviors. We gotta know what to do to address the blood pressure, bring our blood pressures down so we can avoid medications. Now, so this is a typical person with high blood pressure, drinking, smoking, a little bit of a pot belly. So heavy alcohol use. What do we mean by heavy alcohol use? So normally more than 14 drinks per week for men, and 7 for women would be considered, heavy drinking. Now, what do we mean by a drink? So a bottle of beer, a 5-ounce glass of wine, or a 1.5 ounce of hard liquor would be considered one drink. Okay, so for men, more than 14 drinks, women, more than 7 drinks. Being overweight is another big issue. We all need to do a better job to be more active, to lose the weight, to see Dan to help us with coming up with better nutritional. Yeah. Right. So, in terms of the weight, so there's a measure called body mass index. Some of you might be familiar with it. So if you just Google body mass index, put your height and your weight in there, you would see your body mass index. Our body mass index should be below 25. If you measure your waist circumference, for men more than 102 centimeters, and for women more than 88 centimeters would be too much. So we've got to work to get it below those numbers to tackle heart disease and blood pressure. Exercise, extremely important. We have good quality data showing that at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity activity. You go for a brisk walk 5 times a week, that's considered a good exercise routine to have. Okay, if you do something more, even better. Now, what else? Diet. diet is extremely important. Obviously, whatever goes into our body has a direct correlation with driving up our blood pressure. We normally recommend the so-called DASH, dietary approaches to stop hypertension type of diet. So cutting down on the red meat, loss of vegetables, whole grain stuff, chicken and fish, low-fat diet, low-salt diet, olive oil, unsalted nuts. This is a type of diet that we normally recommend to sort of drive up to address the blood pressure. Another very important thing is to limit our sodium intake or salt intake. Now, we normally say less than 1.5 to 2 grams per day of sodium. What does that mean? So if you have a teaspoon of salt, that's 2.3 grams of sodium. So what I tell my patients is that just try to get rid of salt from whatever you add to your food, because you already get enough salt through your processed food, and you always have to pay attention to what it is that you actually put in your food. As opposed to sodium, potassium, on the other hand, is a good thing, and that's for patients who do not have a problem with taking potassium. A lot of patients with kidney disease or patients who are on medications that would drive up the potassium should be careful, but these are the type of food that have high potassium content, and it's good to address the blood pressure. Avocado, banana, leafy greens such as spinach, sweet potato, white mushroom. These are the type of food with high potassium content. Other things, these are some of the things that, the patients always ask me, what about I take probiotics? We do have some data in the literature showing that probably the items that I'm going to show you help with the blood pressure. I don't see any downside to it. The degree of evidence we have for these are not as strong as the other things that we talked about. But if you can afford it, if you don't mind taking them, why not? That's what I would tell patients. Probiotics. There is some research studies showing that the gut flora, which could be affected by probiotics, would modify our blood pressure. So, taking probiotics sometimes could help with the blood pressure. Flaxseed sometimes would, we have some data in the literature showing that flaxseed could potentially help. Hibiscus tea. I had a patient yesterday that told me he drinks 20 cups of tea per day. And we're trying to bargain, maybe you can change some of it to hibiscus tea to address your blood pressure. Garlic, a lot of patients come and tell me, I don't want to take my blood pressure medications, but I want to take a lot of garlic. I don't see a downfall in that, but as long as we make sure that our blood pressure is properly addressed. Dark chocolate is another one that is out there. And last but not the least, stress. We live in a very stressful, world these days. So it's very important that you find a means to address the stress level, whether it's through exercise, whether it's through family or friends, whether it's through, hobbies. Find a way to manage your stress properly, because stress comes up with all kinds of different weird and wonderful ways to affect your health, including driving up your blood pressure. I just put this slide out there as a busy slide. What I want you to pay attention to is that if you try to do the things that we talked about, such as weight loss, we have good quality evidence showing that it'll reduce your blood pressure just by doing your lifestyle things. Every kilogram that you're going to lose is going to bring down your blood pressure by 1 millimeters of mercury. You get rid of salt, you exercise more, at least would affect your blood pressure by 4 or 5 millimeters of mercury. Okay. You have a DASH diet, you can bring down your blood pressure up to 10 millimeters of mercury and hopefully avoid some of the medications that us cardiologists would put you on. Before I tell you when to start medications, I want to tell you a little bit about what medications would drive up the blood pressure. You'd be surprised. A lot of people come to the office and tell me, I take Aleve or Advil or naproxen every day. These are bad drugs. They're okay to take them if you have a lot of pain once in a while, but on a regular basis, they will definitely drive up the blood pressure. oral contraceptives. If you have to be on them, obviously using low-dose estrogen or progestin-only drugs are the way to go. And nasal decongestants. If you have phenylephrine, pseudoephedrine in those drugs, they drive up the blood pressure a lot. And, people with uncontrolled high blood pressure really shouldn't take these drugs. Herbal supplement, just because something is herbal doesn't mean that it's good for you. So specifically, Mahong or St. John's Wort, they would drive up, substances that would drive up the blood pressure. Recreational drugs, obviously, cocaine, heroin, crystal meth, monkey dust, which I don't know what it is, but, that will definitely drive up the blood pressure. Caffeine, very, very important. Just to give you a little bit of an idea about how much caffeine you have. So if you have a cup of coffee, brewed coffee, which we're going to have at 10 o'clock, I hear, right? Yeah. So it has about 95 milligrams of caffeine. If you have 3 cups per day, that's already sort of the limit that we would recommend. More than we need to keep our caffeine level low. Other things, amphetamines, atypical antipsychotics, some of the antidepressants, these are all medications that would drive up the blood pressure. Immunosuppressants, steroids. I'm not telling you not to take these drugs. Obviously, some people have to be on them, but we need to be aware of their potential effect on the blood pressure. Discuss them with your doctors that would prescribe them. Now, finally, these are my last couple of slides. I think I got, 2 more minutes? Yeah. And so when to start medication after we do all these lifestyle changes that hopefully would bring down the blood pressure. Number one is we need to define a high-risk patient. For when patients come to a clinic. A high-risk patient would be a patient who's had heart disease, stroke, blocked arteries, heart attacks, or if they have chronic kidney disease, if they have kidney failure and they're losing a lot of protein in the kidneys, or we have risk scores that we use at clinics that would give us an estimate whether the individual in front of us is high risk to develop heart disease in the next 10 years or not. And if one of those scores come at a score of more than 15% per year, annual risk of cardiac problems will be considered high risk, or patients more than 75 years of age. So these are taken from, I don't want you to memorize these numbers. All these numbers are available out there. Anybody could access them. If you have a high-risk patient, as long as the systolic blood pressure is more than 130 millimeters of mercury, we're going to need medications to bring it down to lower than 120 millimeters of mercury. Okay. If you're a diabetic patient, we're looking for, Canada defines these numbers a little bit different for different groups of patients. These are the latest guidelines that have been developed by Hypertension Canada, and they're very reasonable guidelines. If you're diabetic, we're looking for 130 over 80 millimeters of mercury, and if you're a sort of a low-risk patient, we don't really need to start you on medications if your blood pressure is less than 160 over 100. We'll just push with the lifestyle measures. And as you see, we can easily bring down the blood pressure by lifestyle measures. So this is really the summary slide. I just put this out there. This is the American guidelines. Again, patients would read all this information online, and then they would come to the office. Americans are a little more strict about the guidelines for blood pressure. They almost recommend that for everybody to have a blood pressure less than 130 over 80 millimeters of mercury. I think the Canadian guidelines are very reasonable. I think we have to pay attention to the individual who's in front of us, how much, how capable they are to adjust their lifestyle and bring down the blood pressure. And I hope all of you do from this day forward. Pay attention to what you eat, how much you exercise, how much you weigh, address all those risk factors, and hopefully we don't need to see you at the cardiology clinic. On that note, these are some useful resources. I think everybody should have access to information these days. If you want to learn a little bit more about these topics, Hypertension Canada at www.hypertension.ca has excellent resources for patients. WebMD is very good. Heart.org is a website by American College of Cardiology, and I strongly encourage all of you who have blood pressure problems to purchase a blood pressure monitoring device. You can create logs in a notebook or download apps if you have smartphones, and download apps that would allow you to monitor your blood pressure, so you'll be in charge of your care. On that note, I think I'll finish here. I think I'm a few minutes over. Thank you.
Okay, we have one over here. This is on.
I've heard of some discussion as to whether to take your blood pressure sitting down or standing up. Do you have a comment on that, please?
Excellent question. So sometimes we do ask patients to take their blood pressure standing up. Some patients have a lot of dizziness when they stand up, when they change positions. In those circumstances, we might want to know what the blood pressure is when they stand up to correlate to see if the dizziness is because of low blood pressure or not. But in general, if we're monitoring blood pressure control at home, you should sit, relax for a few minutes. You have your back supported, your legs uncrossed, 90 degrees, and on the floor, and then measure your blood pressure that way. And oftentimes what we say is, measure your blood pressure 3 times. You can get rid of the first numbers, and the last 2 numbers, if they're similar, just take one, or you can, if you really want to be by the book, you can average the last 2 numbers.
Thank you, Ali. My name is Paul Adams. A number of the lifestyle changes you were talking about, exercise, intake of wine. I don't smoke. I don't overuse caffeine. I don't even like the taste of salt. And I'm not on any blood pressure medication. But on a really, really good day, my blood pressure might be 100/70 or 100/65. Do you have any comments on hypotension?
Hypotension?
On hypotension, and why is my blood pressure so low?
Paul, I think you're lucky. I wish my blood pressure was like yours. Concept of low blood pressure. So we know that the lower your blood pressure, the better you'll do. If your blood pressure is less than 120 millimeters of mercury, your systolic blood pressure is less than 120 millimeters of mercury, you'll do really well. How low would be considered low, as long as you don't have any symptoms. Even if your blood pressure is in the 90s, I don't mind. In fact, good for you. I'm certainly glad that your blood pressure is that way. You're obviously careful about your lifestyle habits, and I think there's a little bit of luck in terms of the genetical predisposition as well. So I have absolutely no concerns for blood pressure, in the hundreds. In fact, I wish my blood pressure was like that all the time. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
First of all, congratulations, Paul. I'm sure that there's 90% of the people in this room are envious. You and my wife seem to be in the same category. Doctor, you were asking, or you showed us a slide early on in your presentation about sodium, and I got a little confused on the 2 different pictures that I saw. One said up to 2 grams of sodium per day, and then it said 3.5 to 5. Do you remember that slide?
Yeah. So that's the slide I think you're referring to. If I can find the point. Yeah. So there's sodium and there's salt. If you're just the salt that you use, in your kitchen has a sodium in it. So that's sort of, we say 5 grams of salt. But if you're just purely looking at sodium as you're reading the labels on the food, or that's a little different than salt. So salt has sodium, but obviously has he's got sodium chloride, so there's a little bit of a more. So we got 5 grams of salt equals 2 grams of sodium, more or less, and that's sort of less than 1 teaspoon of salt, kitchen salt, that you use per day. But if you want to read the labels, then exactly.
I have a question for
Sure.
you. I've worked with several people, and they've done everything right. And they've healthy lifestyle, eating properly. One day he went out for his run, came home, sat down, and died.
Yeah. That's an excellent question, and unfortunately is not an uncommon scenario that we face at the hospital, that people do everything by the book and yet end up at the hospital. We shouldn't be discouraged by that. Unfortunately, there's sometimes genetical predispositions to diseases that overtake. There are other factors that we might not be aware of. And what I would say is that if those people didn't do everything by the book, then maybe the bad event would have happened a lot earlier. And these are all, the matter of statistics. An easy example of somebody who smokes. You might smoke till you're 120 years old and nothing happens to you. But we know that it increases the risk of problems for the heart by 30%. So it's a matter of statistics, really.
Yes. I'm just wondering, I go to see my doctor, the cardiologist, and he takes my blood pressure, and it's like 170 over 180, something. Why is it so high? And yet I'll go to rehab and take my blood pressure, and it's way down, below 120 sometimes. And I can't figure this out. Is it a white coat syndrome or what?
Let me ask you this, Jared. Do you like your cardiologist, or you hate being there? Most of my patients don't like me.
Not really.
So,
Oh, yes.
Oh, sorry.
I like Dr. Bargava. He's
Everybody
the best.
loves Dr. Bargava. But there is this concept of white coat hypertension. I almost always ignore the first number that is measured. I personally don't do a good job at my clinic measuring people's blood pressure. We should really sit down, relax. And oftentimes in a busy clinic, there's not enough time. You should sit down, relax, measure the blood pressure multiple times before you get an accurate measurement at the clinic. Having said that, also, there's a group of patients that come to the office and they have this concept of a white coat hypertension. That's why it's extremely important to know what your blood pressure is at home. So I think, I think what you get at home is probably more valuable than what you have at the office. Naturally, when you're more relaxed at the rehab center, your blood pressure is more reflective. Sorry, I think I'm...
That was all the questions for today for Dr. Andelou.
We're going to be
Kathy?
asking more questions after the final presentation. Okay. Go ahead.
Sure, yeah.
Go ahead.
Can that interfere with your medication, with your blood pressure medication?
Excellent question. There is some data in the literature showing that calcium and magnesium supplements would help with reducing the blood pressure. They're not the level of evidence we have for these supplements are not as strong as what we talked about. The Canada hypertension guidelines don't necessarily recommend taking calcium magnesium supplement. I don't see a problem with that. I don't see if my patients are willing to pay for calcium, magnesium, and take that. Calcium is good for bones anyway. But if you take a calcium magnesium supplement and you see an effect in your blood pressure at home, I have absolutely no problem with that. They shouldn't interfere with most of the blood pressure medications that you take. Yeah. Potassium.
Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Andalip, for that wonderful presentation. Girls, I guess going out for wine and pizza is kind of off the list, but we'll exercise afterwards. And now to hear from some of our other great guest speakers of the day, I would like to start off by introducing our next speaker, who is going to be sharing her story with us. She will also be joined by Dr. Bargava. Lindy Brown is a marketing manager for a trade show company, Expo Systems Canada, and most importantly to two little girls, Remy and Sophia. She's also a wife to Eric Brown. She is a recent graduate of the Heart Care Cardiac Rehab Exercise Program, where her friendly nature and positive attitude brought many people together. And now, to add to her list, she is a proud breast cancer survivor. This incredible woman is here today with Dr. Bargava to share her story with us. So please join me in welcoming Lindy Brown to the stage.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I am going to read my speech because I spent the last many, many months trying to forget my story. So I'll get started. My name is Lindy Brown. I'm 42 years old, a mom of two little girls, Remy and Sophia, who are 6 and 4, and a pretty awesome wife to Eric Brown, and now breast cancer warrior. My journey is similar to others, but of course different because no two cancer stories are ever the same. One weekend in July of 2017, while taking a shower, my 3-year-old decided she needed to swing open the shower door and walk right in, clothes and all, which she did often. In quick response to her ninja-like 3-year-old moves, I quickly threw my arms over my chest to deal with her, and if I didn't stick my finger right into a decent-sized lump near the corner of my armpit. I really didn't panic or think much of it, simply because none of the women on my mother's side had breast cancer. And even though we knew little of my father's history because he was adopted, what little we did know of, we were ultimately cancer-free. I made a doctor's appointment with my family doctor on the Monday and was sent for an ultrasound, and was glad to hear everything was fine, that I had a cyst and cysts can get large and to ignore it, and that I will have a follow-up ultrasound in a few more months. 3 months later comes and goes, and I am again going for my second ultrasound and receive the exact same results, a cyst, to ignore it because sometimes cysts can get large. This is now September. One day, 9 full months later, I said to my husband while on a trip with our kids, I'm making a doctor's appointment to get this cyst removed. This thing's driving me crazy. So I go ahead and make another doctor's appointment the following Monday, and I'm now being sent for a mammogram, just to be cautious, because I am 40 years old. The next day, I got the dreaded call to come in and see the doctor. Well, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that that's never good. And deep down, I truly believed I knew this was never good. And so my real journey began. I sat in a chair in her office and was told I had a 7-centimeter mass growing inside my left breast, and that upcoming tests were not to confirm if I had cancer, but what kind. And the kind turned out to be HER2 positive. I told myself repeatedly, don't Google. You all know I did. And in that very second, I went through literally every emotion one person can have. I couldn't for the life of me figure out how this could be with my age, my health, my family history. How did this happen? I ignored nothing and went to the doctors immediately. I did my part. There was no time for placing blame or being mad or even sad for that matter. I had to move forward with a plan because dying was simply not an option. My girls and my husband need me. My family doctor asked me where I wanted to be referred to, and not being from the area, I knew nothing about my options, but my choice was Lakeridge Health. And it was most definitely the best choice for me because I received the dream team of doctors and nurses. I first met with my nurse navigator named Diana, who knew who knew the second she walked in the room and saw the blank look on my face that I was officially a stage 5 crazy. And there is no other accurate words for it. I literally felt like I was going crazy. I think often of Diana because she helped me snap out of my crazy and helped me get my mind strong for the journey ahead. I didn't hear much from that meeting and my husband was there taking notes. All I remember hearing is that I would soon be meeting with an oncologist, a general surgeon, a radiologist, possibly a psychologist, and little did I know at the time I would have a cardiologist to add to the mix, Dr. Bargava. I was still waiting for the plastic surgeon. That's down the road, I guess. I met first with Dr. Forbes, who is my oncologist. I can't say enough great things about her. You don't get much time with your oncologist, but never once did I feel rushed out the door or ever left without a question answered. The first 4 times I met with her, I'm pretty sure, all I did was bawl. So I don't remember much of being in that, but the one thing I remember very clearly was her saying, "Try and hang in there. I know this is very hard, but the treatment works." Dr. Forbes gave my husband and I the rundown of my treatment plan, which consisted of 12 rounds of chemotherapy, followed by my mastectomy for cancericide, followed by 25 rounds of radiation, and then in the future, reconstruction. I started chemotherapy in April of 2018, 1 week before my 41st birthday. I know these drugs are very hard on some people. However, I thank God every single day that not one day during treatment was I ever sick. I was able to take my kids to swimming lessons. I did the grocery shopping. I had an appetite, a really good one because I actually gained 25 pounds. I embraced the appointments where everyone said, "You have to eat." And I simply could not let my doctors down. Plus, I can say the only time I ever did feel a little green was if I ever felt hungry, so I just made sure I was never hungry. The only side effect I really had from chemo was a bit of neuropathy in my hands and feet, and my hands are pretty much back to normal, but my feet not so lucky. My last chemo was August 10th, and I was then scheduled for my mastectomy for October 1st. And Dr. Weirett was my surgeon, whom I cannot also say enough great things about. She did an amazing job, and I'll always be grateful because her bedside manner was very, very comforting. Dr. Weirett was also the doctor that gave me the results of my pathology report. I went to see her for my follow-up appointment, and I'm pretty sure I held my breath for the majority of the time. Right up to the part where she had told me I had had a complete response to chemo and that there was no sign of cancer. I moved from breath holding right back into crying. Every single treatment, every appointment leading up to this one is all a cancer patient wants to hear is that they've had a full response to chemo. I remember very clearly the appointment I had with Dr. Forbes and the day she told me that treatment works. I held on to her words with every needle, every blood pressure cuff. Every time I was annoyed, I had to give my name and birth date for the 15th time that day. When my hair, eyelashes, and eyebrows fell out, but mostly when my daughter asked me if I was going to die. Because a few weeks before that, I said I wasn't going to cry. A few weeks before that, she had a presentation on Terry Fox. And because Terry Fox died, so would I. Those were the hard days of chemo. But I made it, and I knew I could make it through this. I can make it through anything. Mid-November, I started my first 25 rounds of radiation. Thank you. It went pretty textbook. I had some burns and peeling and pain and itching. Thank you. I had burns and peeling and itching, but for the most part it wasn't bad. And I had completely covered the week before Christmas. This is the part where Dr. Bargava comes in. One day between finishing chemo and starting radiation, I received a call from Dr. Forbes asking me if I was feeling okay because my last MUGA test came back showing that my ejection fraction had dropped quite a bit and that she was going to put me on hold for Herceptin until my numbers went back up and would be referring me to a cardiologist. All I could think of was great, another doctor. With all due respect, I was over all of you and certainly didn't want to hear I was getting another one. Sorry. I met with Dr. Bargava. I received some stress tests, echoes, EKGs, and was put on carvedilol, if I'm saying that right, and ramipril. And Dr. Bargava told me I'd start be starting cardiac rehab. I had no idea what that was, but thought that doesn't sound so bad. And then I was told I'd be working out 3 days a week. I was like, are you freaking kidding me? You want me to work out after chemotherapy, radiation, all these other things? I just did not want to do it. But I put on a happy face and was get her done. All I can say is thank goodness for Dr. B. I started cardiac rehab in November at Dr. Bargava's office, and little did I know that I would gain quite a few new sets of grandparents, a mechanic, a legendary apple pie recipe, and I'll never forget the day I taught Jim how to put risky pictures of models on the background of his phone so he could irk his wife. I made it very clear he was never to tell anyone I was the one that showed him how to do this. All joking aside, once I got started in the program, I started to feel much better. My body didn't ache as much, and I noticed slowly my energy level was going back up, and my heart was getting better. I have been receiving contrast echoes every 3 months, and I have improved quite a bit. Before I started treatment, my ejection fraction was around 58 to 60%. After I finished chemo and Herceptin, I went down to 41%. My last 2 contrast echoes showed that I'm sitting around 48 to 50%. I have completed the cardiac rehab program and continue to work out on my own. I need to up my game, not gonna lie. I made sure to tell my 6-year-old I finished my time at the heart doctor so she can stop telling people I'm at rehab. And I know she was doing this because one day I got a call from the girls' school leaving me a message to call her back when I was done at rehab. That opened the door for some serious explanations, and I assured her my daughter forgot to put the word cardiac in front of rehab. Today I'm almost finished treatment. I have 5 Herceptin treatments left, and I will be starting back to work most likely the end of summer. I look forward to getting back to a normal routine again, and I'm told once I'm done Herceptin that my heart will only improve from there and that the side effects from this drug are not permanent. So this is my story. It's been a long year, full of life-changing experiences, some bad, some good. I, like everyone else, given the diagnosis of cancer. I'm a little afraid of the future. I'm constantly afraid it might come back. And if it ever does, I know I've done everything in my control to prevent it. I've met and forged some new and dear relationships. Cancer is terrifying. It can consume you in every way possible if you let it. And I have personally chosen to move on from this and learn from my experiences, and will continue to bring awareness to the amazing team the amazing care and team I have received and continue to receive by the amazing staff at Lake Ridge Health and Dr. Bargava. Thank you. Do you need a stamper?
Maybe you can sit down. As you can see, she's an amazing person, amazing patient, and an amazing speaker. Her story is amazing. You would think, why would we bring somebody with cancer to a heart event? Cancer, to me as a cardiologist, cancer is frightening. To the oncologist, any heart effect, if anything problem with the heart in the cancer patient is frightening for the cancer doctors. And we talk to each other about it. I'll mention a few things. So she got her treatment, the surgery, the chemo, the radiation. The chemotherapy, the few drugs, and one of them she got, which is excellent and absolutely wonderful for cancer patients, preventing reoccurrence, etc. And that drug is called, well, there are 2 classes of drugs. One called anthracycline. I won't bore you with these technical names, just call them drugs. And one is called Herceptin. So the cancer doctors, what they do is before they start the treatment, because not in everybody, but in a very few people, these drugs can weaken the heart muscle. When she used the word ejection fraction, let me explain this to you. So basically, when the cancer doctors start this treatment, they get a patient, she used the word MAGA scan, which is a nuclear scan of the heart to see what is the contracting power of the heart. And the ejection fraction is the amount of blood which is pumped with every heartbeat. And normally, heart, when it beats, is never empty. 60% of the blood is pumped out, 40% remains in the heart. So her normal ejection fraction is 60. She said she started with 58. And then with this treatment of the chemotherapy drug, the number dropped. And the cancer doctors do check it. And when they see, it's going down, they say, you better see a cardiologist. She came to see us. And there's a standard treatment we give. And the good news is, in most of the patients, we can reverse this weakness of the heart or at least stabilize it. And they do well. And of course, the cancer doctors, they have certain guidelines. They will stop the cancer treatment because the number has gone down. And I always worried that if the number goes down, this poor person's treatment will stop. So my job is to make sure the treatment does not stop. And so she got on the treatment. Her numbers improved somewhat, but did not come back to 60. But one of the things that benefited her was an exercise program. And I'll show you I have a presentation later, that cardiac, or let's not say cardiac, an exercise routine helps patients deal with cancer. Their response to treatment is better. They feel better. And we do not understand what are the reasons, but a research study was done, and I'll show you. And again, one of the authors in that was another Bhargava, a cousin of mine at the Ottawa Heart. And they published this in the Canadian Medical Association Journal, that how rehabilitation, and there's a funny story about rehab, She was not in a drug rehab, she was a cardiac rehab. How rehab exercise program helps patient cope with cancer, and even the response to treatment is better. How? I do not know, but that's why she has done well. And I thought it would be good to bring her that it's just not blocked arteries, heart attacks, or heart failure due to other reasons. Patients get into heart trouble for other reasons. So that's middle to fill up the background on her. Any questions? The questions can be directed to me, Lindy, or anybody. Actually, we have here Dr. Forbes could not come here. She had another engagement. But we have Debbie Chu here. She is a nurse practitioner with cancer, but she's now retired. And she has dealt with a lot of, so maybe she can help me at some of the answers to some of the cancer-related questions. Anyway, questions?
I was also on Herceptin, and after 4 treatments, I went from 60 down to 30. So I was taken off the Herceptin, and I just started back on it. Like, that was last August I was taken off, and I just got back on it 3 weeks ago, so I've had 2 more doses, and I'm only getting 3 more, so I'm only allowed 9 in total, and you're supposed to get 18. And I was just wondering how many Lindy got.
Yes, yeah. You can come up here, or they'll bring just come and stand up here. Because a lot of...
This is my moment. I was scheduled for 18. I was put on hold after... I have to think about this. I think I had 6, and that's when I had started to drop. I didn't feel ill. I didn't feel tired. I didn't feel sick. When she actually called me to tell me my results had dropped quite a bit, I was shopping at Winners. And I'm like, I feel fine. Is this bad? And she's like, no, your numbers will probably come back up. But it took 3 months. And it took 3 months after being put on carvedilol and ramipril, if I'm saying that right, because I don't even really know what those are. I Googled it once, and I was just like, I'll just take what he gives me. But I will be getting 18. Now, I am absolutely not a doctor and know very little about drugs, but I did hear that if you can get through half of your Herceptin, is just as effective as finishing your 18. So, again, that could be all make-believe, but I'm pretty sure that I will be getting 18 in total.
Okay, so over what time span?
I started chemo August, I have to think. I was done in August, so it's once every 3 weeks for 18 in total, which I'm done in July. So I've got 5 left at every 3 weeks. Actually, I have one on Monday, so I'm down to 4, and that puts me done in July. So, did I answer that question? I'm not sure.
So it's a little over a year?
Yeah, a year and a few months. But again, I was put on hold for 3 months.
Yeah.
So it would have been just about done right now, really.
Yeah, okay, I'm going to have to investigate because I don't know why I can't get any more.
Any other questions for either one of them? No?
Thank you,
Okay,
Lindy.
well, thank you very much.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Lindy, for sharing your courageous journey with us and educating us on a topic that's not always talked about, and I have to give you a hug. I also have to give another shout out to another girl that's here.
I have to give her.
She's also a breast cancer survivor. She's not only just an amazingly strong woman, but also one of the best nurses I've ever worked with, Letty. She also graduated from Dr. Bargava's Heart Care Cardiac Rehab. Okay. Okay, I'm back. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Dr. Bargava.
It is good morning.
That's pretty good. He's a pretty...
What are we supposed to respond?
It sure is.
It sure is.
That's pretty good. He's been listening. So Dr. Bargava is staying up on stage as he is our next guest speaker who's going to educate us on heart failure. So Dr. Bargava is the director of the Heart Care Cardiac Research Prevention and Rehab Program of the Cardiac Wellness Center, Oshawa. He is also senior staff cardiologist at Lake Ridge Health, Oshawa. He received his MBBS in 1972 from Gandhi Medical College, Bhopal, India. He was awarded 8 gold medals for standing first in merit in all MBBS exams. He completed his internship at Toronto General Hospital and internal medicine and cardiology fellowship training at McMaster University. He then started his cardiology practice in Oshawa in 1982. He was a recipient of the award of the Outstanding Innovation in Patient Care by the Research Institute in Oshawa in 2004. And just a couple of years ago, he was awarded the Most Outstanding Physician Award by Lake Ridge Health, Oshawa. Dr. Bargava, I give the floor back to you.
Thank you, Kathy, for the introduction. I will make sure that things are working. Yes? Okay. So, following on the story of Lindy, I thought we will talk about heart failure and prevention, treatment of this condition. We're supposed to make disclosures that Dr. Anna did, and for this presentation and the entire program that you see here, there's no financial conflict of interest that I have with anybody. We have no support from pharmaceutical industry or any other private or government agency. All speakers here have volunteered their time. And also, when I read, I thought I should also add, there's all volunteers in this Faith United Church who help make all this stuff here, and also the church does not charge me any money to come and use their facilities. Thank you. So this is a slide. Those who have been here before, you must have seen this. I always say the heart has got few systems. One is the plumbing system with the coronary arteries, and we are not having any topic on that when these arteries get blocked, and this is basically called the problem with the plumbing system. And then there is the pump, the heart muscle itself. And my topic today is more related to the pump, which is the muscle which does not work properly, so the pump kind of becomes weaker. And then, of course, the electrical system, the heart, which causes electrical irregularity. That means heartbeat becomes irregular, too fast, too slow. And they have different medication and treatment for it. So it's the plumbing system, the pump, and the electrical system. And, of course, the heart problems do not stop there. There are valves in the heart. These are the valves. They can become a little sticky. They can become a little leaky, and we may have to fix them. So there are a lot of other conditions. But we will focus here on heart failure. And this question is, what I want to say is, it may sound alarming that somebody has got heart failure, but actually it doesn't mean the heart has failed. It just means that heart is not pumping as effectively as it should. And this is the pumping power of the heart. And I said the normal pumping power of the heart is 60%. That's the blood that's pumped out. Often I tell my patients, this is like a 6-cylinder car. The car can run with even 2 cylinders, except it moves slowly, and it takes time to get from, and it doesn't matter how much pressure you put on the gas pedal, it doesn't work. It's just 2-cylinder. So in Lindy's case, for example, let's say 50%, let's call it, her heart is like a car engine working on 5 cylinders. But not, so a little weaker, but not too bad. Also, people ask me, what is the difference between a heart attack and heart failure? Are the same thing? And they're not. But there is a little correlation. A person can have a heart attack when the arteries are blocked, and you get chest pain, shortness of breath, sweating, and you go to the hospital. It is just a heart attack. And I say just a heart attack because I'm a cardiologist who say, it's just a heart attack, This heart attack may not lead to any weakness of the heart muscle, and this does not lead to heart failure or weakness. And majority of the patients who get to the hospital quickly with blocked arteries causing chest pain, we make a diagnosis and we immediately rush them to, if you go to the emergency room, they go to Scarborough Hospital, and we do an angiogram, see where the blockage is, unplug it, and there's no heart failure. But sometimes this heart attack can be so severe, it affects such a large part of the heart muscle that it becomes weak, and you start working on 5 cylinders or 4 cylinders, and the ejection fraction goes down. And of course, when you have this, you are in heart failure, but that resolves quickly once we give the treatment. So, how do we diagnose heart failure? The commonest symptom of heart failure, or 2 main symptoms, are shortness of breath and reduced ability to exercise. So patients so often will start noticing that they are short of breath with exertion. Now, most of the patients I see with shortness of breath and exertion and fatigue are usually physically deconditioned. Thank God we don't diagnose heart failure with this. The other common symptom of heart failure is swollen legs and ankles, and this is due to buildup of fluid in the legs. And this is because the heart does not pump strongly enough. The blood that comes from the legs, the veins, as Dr. Anna had said, the blood returns with the blue blood or the deoxygenated blood. This gets not pumped out, so there's a backlog, and the fluid builds up in the lung, causing shortness of breath. We call heart failure or pulmonary edema, fluid in the lungs, and of course swelling. So these are the common symptoms. And this picture, of course, I borrowed from somebody. This is somebody who, the stages of heart failure could be acute, chronic, and of course under treatment, asymptomatic. In a way, Lindy would classify that she has heart failure because she has a little cardiac dysfunction. But she does not belong to this category, she belongs to this. Or asymptomatic, really. She's not huffing and puffing. She could talk here, she could walk up here. So these patients who get into acute trouble with heart failure and go to the emergency room have neck veins are popping up, they're short of breath, and they are gasping for air hunger, and often the symptoms of shortness of breath starts with just coughing at night when you're lying down because the fluid builds up in the lung. Then you may get episodes of sudden significant shortness of breath at night which wakes you up sleep. We doctors call it nocturnal dyspnea. Or you can also lie flat in bed. You have to raise up or you may have to go to lazy boy or something and sit and sleep in that. That's acute severe heart failure. Then there's the chronic heart failure. Patients have swollen legs. They get fluid in the abdomen as well. So, and of course, neck veins are prominent. They've got ascites, which is fluid in the belly. And this is where they do not have a heart attack. They just develop due to other reasons. And once they're on treatment, they may still they're working on 2 cylinders, 3 cylinders, 5 cylinders, but they are asymptomatic. Just tired, they don't have the same energy. So the next question is, what are the common causes of heart failure? Well, one common cause of severe acute heart failure is a heart attack. Then, as it was mentioned earlier, high blood pressure, untreated, puts a strain on the heart muscle, and the heart muscle copes with it for some time, but then it starts becoming weak, and the fluid backs up in the lungs and the legs, and you get symptoms and you get heart failure. Diabetes is one of the causes of weakened heart, and this is because diabetic patients, they often have blockages of arteries, coronary artery disease, and weakens the heart muscle. Sometimes we see patients with heart failure who are very young. They don't have any heart blockages. They don't have any other problem. They got a viral infection which selectively affected the heart muscle and made it weak. And it's called myocarditis. Then, of course, heart failure can be due to leaking valves or stiff valves. We call them stenosis and aortic stenosis and mitral regurgitation. They're 2 words. I'll try to use the minimum, these technical words, but I want to assure you I know those technical words. and lastly is the prescription drugs which are very useful, treat conditions very effectively, and when they are given, they can cause the weakness of the heart muscle, as with Lindy, the cancer drug. Now, rheumatoid arthritis, there are certain drugs, like Remicade, which are given for other condition as well. They can cause also heart failure. Now, I mentioned the cancer drugs. Now, it was mentioned the drugs used for arthritis, we call them NSAIDs or non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. In high doses used for long time can lead to high blood pressure, etc., and other issues which leads to heart failure. Antacids, if somebody is having a lot of heartburn and they drink tons and tons of the soda bicarbonate, a lot of salt overload on them, and then can cause heart failure in patients who are prone to it or already have a heart condition. Normally, if you take Thompson antacids, it's not going to cause heart failure. So, Dr. Ali and Elif had mentioned about the, various drugs like cough remedies, etc. They have ephedrine or epinephrine-like drugs and decongestants. They can also predispose to heart failure, but you have to have underlying problem just by taking when you have a cough and cold cough medications and otherwise healthy, it will not cause heart failure. So, as it was mentioned, don't stop taking these drugs because I mentioned them. But if you are taking these drugs and you get into these symptoms, shortness of breath, ankle swelling, seek medical attention. And of course, some other bodybuilding drugs, etc., amphetamines, they can create a problem. And so, how do these drugs? One of the things is drugs can create heart failure or weaken heart muscle. How do these drugs can harm? First, they're toxic to the cells of the heart, especially drugs like Herceptin, Remicade, and others. They're toxic to the heart muscle, but they're very effective in treating the other condition. So that's where poor Lindy had to add another doctor to her list. She has to see Dr. Bhargava because a very effective drug for cancer treatment, affecting it. But as I know, very few patients, we end up stopping their treatment for cancer drugs because we give them other my heart medication cocktail, and that stabilizes their condition, they feel better. Now, some of the drugs can prevent the heart from beating as strongly as it should or relaxing between the beats. Some drugs can slow the heart too much and cause weakness and heart failure. Some drugs can cause worsening of high blood pressure and then can cause heart failure. And basically, some of the drugs or whatever you take deliver a high salt load or sodium load, as the word was used. And so basically, some drugs can also prevent your heart failure medication. They will not work as well. But I should say, when you're talking about drugs interaction, most interactions are not severe, but they can be. It's just to be aware that there could be a problem. That's why we always say it's very important to carry a list of all your drugs you can take, both prescription and non-prescription, to the doctor's office, especially when you visit them, and tell them this is what they take, because sometimes you will be taking a blood pressure medication, and as it was mentioned, you started taking St. John's wort because somebody told you that this is very good for depression. So you take St. John's wort, the blood pressure goes up. It goes very high. And your doctor does not know why the heck the blood pressure went up. We thought it's the natural causes, when it was unnatural cause you were taking St. John's wort. And talking about high blood pressure, I'll just digress a little bit. Then Dr. Anderle will say, oh yeah, your blood pressure is out of control. We know this happens all the time. Let's increase your blood pressure medication dose. He increases the blood pressure medication dose, blood pressure comes under control, heart failure, everything looks better. Then you felt that the St. John's wort is not doing the trick, you stop taking it. Dr. Anderle has already increased your blood pressure medication because he had to. He did not know you were taking St. John's wort. Now the blood pressure drops and you start feeling dizzy and lightheaded, and then you're in trouble. And then he has to revert back to, and all because he did not know you were taking St. John's wort. Important point, please take your medication list to the doctor and show it to him, especially if you're taking herbal medication. As is mentioned, herbal medications are good for certain conditions. Some certain conditions, they're bad, they're really bad. Let your doctor know. Okay. Treating heart failure. Of course, we give medicines for the heart failure. Reshma will warn me when we have got a few minutes left, or wave to me because I get carried away. And so we give medications. And the common medications for heart failure are, first we give, if you have got fluid buildup, the water pills, Lasix or furosemide. And there are different types of water pills. And we may have to give a different combination at times. And again, we will not talk about different medication, but we can answer questions. But the drug that we give is the water pills, the ACE inhibitors, or ARBs as we call them, and beta blockers like carvedilol, metoprolol, and similar drugs are given. And then, of course, you must treat the underlying cause. If we know, the problem is often we do not know what is the precise underlying cause for heart failure. Of course, if you had a heart attack, you know it was blocked arteries, which you fixed it, but it has left a scar tissue, and that we may not be able to fix it because scar tissue is a permanent damage. But the scar tissue is small, it recovers quite well, but if it's large, then you may need to take medication for a longer time. If it's a virus infection, we make the diagnosis usually in younger patients because all the tests are normal. There's no blockage in the arteries. There's no irregularity with the heartbeat, etc. But the heart muscle became weak. And by the time we see the patient, there's no viral blood work or studies that we can do to make the precise diagnosis. We say this is viral cardiomyopathy. That's the medical term for it. And you just give the treatment. You cannot, because the virus has come, done the damage, and gone. And last but not the least, beside the medication, exercise helps improve heart function. And so the exercise program or exercise routine that people have it is not just patients who had heart attacks, bypass surgeries, or angioplasties, but as you have seen in patients like Lindy, patients with cancer and other conditions can also improve by this exercise program. Of course, you all can do exercise alone at home, but a lot of people are not able to do it because we all have excuses in why we cannot do it this morning. So sometimes if you join a group, it works well for you. Of course, the treatment is unclog the coronary arteries if you had a heart attack. And if you have a very slow heartbeat or even a very weak heart, if your heart is just pumping with 1 or 2 cylinders, that means ejection fraction is 20%, 30%, and no matter what medications that we give, it doesn't improve. We give pacemakers and defibrillators, and that helps you. And of course, last but not the least, in very severe cases, and which I don't even talk to the patient because very few get to the stage, you may need heart transplant, etc. This was just to remind me, rehabilitation patients with advanced cancer, and Dr. Martin Chazen. Both of them moved to, in Toronto, William Osler Center. This is my cousin who was one of the authors in this article, and their conclusion was, it's a long conclusion because I have been shown that I have got in a few minutes. I'll just quickly read it. Early evidence suggests that a comprehensive cancer care program should incorporate rehab exercises with drug and radiotherapy treatment throughout the span of care. Numerous pronouncements and consult statements call on physicians to treat the whole person and to introduce palliative care principles early. We can learn from geriatricians, cardiologists, and pulmonologists who have incorporated the successful rehab programs in their disciplines, the pathophysiology, etc., of distress patients with advanced cancer is not dissimilar from mechanisms affecting frail elderly patients and patients with congestive heart failure and chronic lung disease. And this is being recognized more and more. I get a lot more patients now with suffering from cancer. So it's just not the valves and the blocked arteries that we look after, but we look after a different set of patients too. This is just a picture to show how if somebody is waiting for a heart transplant, they can put a pump and use it. It's called an LVAD device. And thank you. And this is from McAfee. And this picture I took in Italy. Italians are very good with their designs and all. And you know, this is how they serve their coffee. It's not that because they knew I was a heart doctor. This is how they serve coffee in Italy. So thank you. And questions for me or? Yep.
The focus tends to be on the two readings. What's the relevance of the heart rate reading?
Sorry, the question is.
Well, I haven't heard too much except just a few minutes ago about heart rate, but there's a lot of emphasis on our blood pressure, the two numbers.
Oh, by the way, the two numbers, right?
But we also get the heart rate number.
Heart rate number, yeah.
He wants to know how that's related to the issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the blood pressure, as I mentioned, that is the systolic blood pressure, those numbers are high because the heart has to pump with so much pressure and then it weakens. Now, your other question is, what does the heart rate have to do with it? If the heart is beating very fast, and let's say running, and you have a condition in which the heart kind of races off and running at 170 beats per minute, when you're just sitting watching TV, that does not allow the heart to fill properly and pump properly because it's going like this, and that fluid builds up, and you get fluid in the lung, and you get heart failure. If the heart is beating too slow because you're now a mature citizen, and by the way, I'm maturing for the citizen too. We don't call myself senior citizen. I've got the hearing aids and braces and all this. So when you get older, the heart's own battery starts slowing down. And if it starts too slow, the heart does not pump enough, and there's a backlog in the lungs of the fluid, and so that's why very slow heart rate is not good for patients, and it causes heart failure. I hope that answers the question. We have another question there.
Okay, we'll start.
What's a very slow heart rate? How slow?
What is the
A very slow heart rate.
Okay, so we ask this all the time. What's the normal heart rate? The normal heart rate is considered 72 is an average heart rate for a person who's not taking any medication and is just a regular person. Once your heart rate starts going below 45, 50 is the number where we start calling bradycardia. That means a slow heart rate. But a lot of time athletes have a heart rate of 50 and sometimes even slower than that. But once you are running around below 50 all the time, you should have a check, because is it due to medication or is just your battery is getting weak. So, but if you don't feel unwell at all, you don't have dizziness, fatigue, etc., a heart rate of 48, we ignore it. But 50 is below, is you should talk to somebody, a family doctor. Look, my heart is 50 all the time, or 40. And once you start getting to 40 or below, then you may need a pacemaker. Got a question up? Okay. Okay, one question here and one there. Yeah.
You mentioned that Remicade affects your heart if you're taking that. Do all the biologics affect your heart? Would Enbrel and Humira do the same?
No, not all biologics affect the heart, and Remicade is identified as one of them, and that too also not in everybody who gets Remicade. It's only few. And this is where the genes and genetic predisposition comes in, which we do not understand at this time. But it's quite possible in a few years, if you are going to get Remicade, they'll say, let's do your genetic testing. Oh, and you have this gene number so-and-so funny looking, then you should not take it, because they know this will happen. This will happen, I'm sure, for Herceptin patients who get Herceptin. Let's do a gene testing on you, and if you have the wrong gene, you will get into trouble, and hopefully we will be able to identify which wrong gene creates real bad trouble, or other one is just be cautious. Yes.
I was just wondering, if a person was to take like a decongestant and maybe like an Advil and ibuprofen and like an antacid, could they potentially give themselves a heart attack? Like, it almost sounds like the combination would be really bad.
So the question is about ibuprofen and other...
like a decongestant,
yes,
and an antacid.
Yes.
Because those were three you mentioned, right?
Yes, I do. Yeah. So if you take antacids occasionally, no big deal. But some people are having a lot of heartburn, and they already have got high blood pressure, and they're not going to the doctor. They said, well, I can take the Tums or the antacids from over the counter and start drinking 1 bottle a day. There's a lot of salt in there. That creates a problem. For decongestants, because of the ephedrine, etc., it can make your heart beat fast. And if you're predisposed, you already have a heart condition, then it could get into trouble. But if you take a decongestant, I take it too, and I have got high blood pressure under control with medication. I take it, a few tablets for 2-3 days, no big deal, no problem. So you just have to be aware. It's not that you should not take these drugs. But if you have a weak heart and you have got into heart failure, then you must talk to your doctor first.
And would you know by different medications that you take that could slow your heart rate?
Yeah. Different medication you take, yes, they can slow the heart rate. Some drugs we prescribe you to slow the heart rate down, because even in heart failure, if your heart rate is running at 70 or 80, it takes more oxygen. So we give you a medication like carvedilol and metoprolol and other beta blockers. They slow the heart rate down and they make it function better. So yes, but some other drugs can make the heartbeat much slower when they're not, we didn't want the heart rate to slow down. So yes, but hopefully your doctor generally would know, don't give this drug to this person or don't give them high dose, because it could be dose related too. We had a question in the front here, please.
Okay, coming.
Hi there. I have some heart damage, and lately I've been feeling a lot better. Now, and I don't seem to need my diuretic as much. Coincidentally, I've been taking CQ10, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that, and also its effect on arthritis patients.
The effect on?
Pardon?
The effect of CoQ10 on?
Arthritis. Arthritis.
Arthritis. Okay.
Same as you've got.
Okay. So the question is about CoQ10. CoQ10 is also called a heart vitamin. And patients who take CoQ10, usually I tell them to take CoQ10 to a certain group of people. So look, take CoQ10 if you have got muscle aches and pains because I give you cholesterol medication. And I would say half of the patients who take CoQ10, the muscle aches and pains disappear and they feel wonderful. I take a cholesterol medication, have these aches and pains. So I said, I should take it too. It didn't make any difference to me. My body had just aches and pains, Now, the other person other condition for which we say take CoQ10, if you have a heart failure, because consider the vitamin for the heart muscle and heart function. Is there conclusive, absolute evidence that this benefits everybody? Answer is no, but there's no harm to it. So in fact, I tell patients with really bad heart dysfunction, take CoQ10 and also take vitamin D, because that's also one vitamin which is supposed to help patients with heart failure, etc. So vitamin D and CoQ10 for patients who have a history of heart failure. Do you take vitamin D? There you go. She takes it. Good.
I'm going to ask him one more thing. Oh, okay. One more thing. I lost my train of thought there. What was it?
Ask me later. Not to worry. I'm not going anywhere. And you are my patient. Just come up here.
Okay.
Don't worry.
Okay.
I get these moments too. Sorry.
I remember. Goodbye.
Yes. Okay.
It was on milk thistle. What's your thought you were taking all these drugs?
Yes.
What's your thought on cleansing of the liver with milk thistle?
I didn't understand.
Milk thistle.
Yeah.
Milk thistle. Milk thistle.
I have no idea. I'll have to find out. Milk thistle. Anybody knows?
The next speaker knows.
The next speaker knows more about all this. This is Dr. Deepa Bhargava. She will tell you milk thistle. Pardon me? My sister-in-law will tell you. This is the whole family here. This is a family event. My daughter is here.
Thank you. Turned off first. Hello. Thank you so much, Dr. Bhargava, for that amazing update on congestive heart failure lecture. Now, just to quickly mention that as you're browsing around for your nutrition break that will be coming after our next guest speaker, there is on the back table a flyer that has a schedule of all of the free upcoming rehab lectures for May, June, and July. Please feel free to grab one. Lots of information in those sessions, very interactive. And there's also a list there to sign up for your email so that we can email any of the upcoming things as well. And if they don't have an email, Rishma, can they just add their phone number? Yeah, you can just add your phone number there. So, okay. How's everybody doing? Do we need to have a bit of a stretch yet, or are we doing good? A little bit of a stretch? Okay, Kamlesh. Just stand just for a sec, guys. Rotate the shoulders a little bit. Get that energy flowing again. Feel free to high five again if you want. We all just need a little bit of sunshine and caffeine, eh? Can I just get a show of hands to see who all is from the Oshawa area that's come today? Oshawa? Lots. And what about from the Curtis? Curtis as well. Anybody further west than Oshawa? Oh, nice. And other than Dr. Mukesh Bhargava and I, anybody further east from Coburg? Coburg. Wonderful. That's great. Great.
How about Faith United Church? Did you hear about this from Faith United Church?
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you,
And-
Faith United Church.
Great. Good job. Okay, guys, we'll have a seat and we're going to carry on with our next amazing guest speaker before we have our lunch. So our next speaker of the day is someone you might remember from previous years, Dr. Deepa Bhargava. Dr. Deepa is currently an integrative medicine practitioner based in Ontario. She is a member of the American Association of Integrative Medicine and the Canadian Integrative Medical Association. So for the last 35 years, she practiced as a head and neck surgeon and otolaryngologist. In a university teaching hospital in Oman. She has been a lead researcher and has published over 60 research papers, including several book chapters and books. She is passionate, and she's always believed in the philosophy of integrative medicine. For the past 35 years, caring for thousands of patients by integrating surgery, medication, mind-body medicine, herbal medicine, along with other natural solutions. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Deepa Bhargava.
Hi. So, good morning, everyone. And I'm sure many of you would be wondering, ENT specialist and a surgeon, what is she doing in this field? Well, just to summarize, I faced a lot of health challenges with myself and my families, over my career of 35, 37 years. And many, many times I did see something borderline like miracles happening with herbal medicine and ancient medicine practice. That's basically the Ayurveda, which belongs to a very ancient system of Indian medicine, which is probably the oldest medical system of the world, And that led me into my quest since I've been a researcher. So I have been researching a lot on herbs and other alternative medicine. I'm not good with this. Yeah. I hope you can all hear me. Yeah. And that led me to my research into this. And since I write, and I'm pretty passionate about it, and so I keep writing. I have published about 3 books, basically one is herbs and spices. Last time I spoke on herbs and spices for intermittent fasting. And I just recently, 2 months back, I came out with what is this? Okay. Now, how many of you, I would like to ask you, how many of you believe that food can be a slow poison and as well food can be medicine? Okay. So not many, but definitely food can be a slow poison. And similarly, food can be even medicine. And I will try to show you some things, in the talk for this. This is my book, which I have come out with it was 2 months back. It's Applying Ancient Wisdom to Today's Food. But today my talk is geared towards the heart health, but a lot of things are referenced from this book only. The book is actually free on Amazon. The e-version is kind of free for the people, but the paperback is about $11, so it's okay. Now, the objectives of today is, now what pleasantly surprised me, I was working last year on the book to get it out, and when I was just about to send my manuscript for publication, just then I was hit by the New Canada Food Guide. I was kind of, actually people might think I'm biased, but I always thought that a lot of research, a lot of advice, especially nutritional advice, I'm sad to say, I'm not the only one. Many people feel that it's all been geared to, grease the wheels of capitalism. The sugar industry, the meat industry, they're all very, very strong, the drug industry. So that's what I had always felt, along with like other integrative practitioners. But we were very surprised, and I was very happy to see the new Canada Food Guidelines, because they have ignored a lot of business biases, and I would urge everyone to, at least have a look at it, because what they have now discovered, they have extensively researched the nutritional research, and they have come out with this guide. And, Canada spends tons of money to get this food guide out. And what has come out in the new food guide goes very much with the ancient wisdom and the practice which is prescribed and taught by the ancient systems of medicine. So today we are going to talk a bit about the personal nutrition, some new things, and we would like to have some actionable steps to improve our hearts. This picture I have downloaded from the Canada Guide, and there were very interesting things. Now they are recommending people to be more plant-based in their food habits. They have kind of said to reduce or avoid dairy, and which Canada is a big dairy producing country. It's a big thing for them to come out with this recommendation. Dairy and meat, especially red meat and all. So one has to try and slowly shift towards a more plant-based diet, which was very nice to go through. Besides that, they even recommended that people should cook at home. And this was nice. It's a big one, because if you see the modern living, people have kind of outsourced their cooking to the industry. It's so easy to get cheap food everywhere. It's much cheaper to buy food at times than cook greens and all at home. So that's also there. Besides that, one more new thing was they have, prescribed mindful eating. And this is one thing, again, which goes back to the Ayurveda, because they're very big on mindful eating. Now, I will not go into details about the Canada Food Guide, because it's already there on the net. You can go through it, and the time is limited. I think you all are familiar with this picture. This is what we are bombarded with. Now, do you know that the food industry also does a lot of research, to the extent I was surprised to read that they even put the brains, they put people through MRI scans and different machines to see how much there's something known as a craveability index. So any food for the food industry, they want it to be such that you have a high craveability index. And there are so many chemicals which are additives and chemicals and preservatives which we are unaware of, and it all tastes so good. Actually, who would like to eat vegetables if you get any of this? They all taste extremely good. So this was the consumer report. I hope you can see clearly. They have discovered the beef has been tested, and they found it has anti-inflammatory, antifungal, and even antidepressants. That was a big one. Antibiotics, we all know that antibiotics, the biggest consumer, 80% of the antibiotics which are produced in the world are used by the animal husbandry industry. You can imagine the amount of antibiotics are being used for the animals, because they are kept in bad conditions, they are kept in overcrowded, so they don't want them to get sick and die. And even not only that, the antibiotics kind of destroys the microbiome of the animals, and this leads them to put on a lot of weight. So when more heavier the animal, more money the business people get with it. So antibiotics is there, but you can see this is what the meat has. And they may label it at times organic. There are very, very few sources of high quality meat, and it's expensive. So meat is, the people have for good health, it's advisable to shift towards more plant-based eating. Now, today's food, what are we eating? The vegetable oils that we get is genetically modified. They are genetically modified organisms. Most of canola is a genetically modified seed, and most of the food the vegetable oils are kind of poisonous and toxic also to the body to some extent. Then we have the trans fats. If you go to the industry, the trans fats are very good for the food industry because they help the food not getting spoiled. The shelf life of the food doubles up when they use trans fats, and they even taste much better. So there are a lot of trans fats, which is again a very poisonous thing for the body. The eggs are raised by caged If you see the chicken, the way they are raised, and the hormones and the antibiotics that go into the poultry, you will be scared. Of course, now I'm happy that Canada, over the years now, we're getting more of the free-range eggs and all are much more available. But they are a little expensive. Then we come to the milk. The milk is also laden with antibiotics, hormones, and all the grains that the cow are fed are all genetically modified. So this is also not a very good thing for us. Meat, I have already mentioned the amount of hormones, antibiotic, even antidepressants. I wonder why they give antidepressants to the cows. Maybe they are aggressive or what's happening. Maybe they have mad cow, but they have found antidepressants in cows. God knows why. But you know what we believe? You are what you eat. So if you're eating the meat, this is actually our ancient wisdom. If you eat meat from a cow who's depressed, you'll also feel depressed. So this is, kind of a belief which is there, but maybe that's the thing. So, and then fish. I always thought salmon was very healthy, and I was buying a lot of tons of salmon. And when I went to research for my book, I found 80% of the salmon that we eat in North America has been farmed. It's, they have these big tanks where they feed the salmon pellets of soy, modified soy, which is again a GMO, and they give them antibiotics because there's overcrowding, they shouldn't fall sick. So the salmon also is not so good. It's very difficult to get alpine salmon, which is expensive, and of course tastes much better. So, you see, even salmon has been, then we have artificial meat. They churn the meat. In fact, you can find it in this, I saw it in Freshco that day. There was chicken breast, and I said, this looks quite cheap. But actually it was artificial. What they do, they take all the meat parts of the chicken and they, grind it up and they form it in the form of chicken breast and they market it as, it's artificial, it's lab meat, So we are not aware about, of course many people would be aware, but most of the common people are not aware about what food we are getting. Even unfortunately the vegetables that we get are again genetically modified. Most of the zucchini, corn, they're all genetically modified, and they have got a lot of pesticides, and they do have some kind of things in them. So besides that, that's not enough. The food industry is going to add a lot of preservatives and additives and stabilizers and food colors. And the worst one, which is the most damaging chemical, is monosodium glutamate. This is a flavor enhancer, and it improves the taste of food because it dilates your taste buds. When you eat anything, your taste buds dilate and you find it more tasty. You get addicted to the food and it kind of hits your brain. So you have the craveability index of the food goes up. Now, monosodium glutamate, people have discovered, but the food industry scientists have created many similar chemicals to monosodium glutamate, which we are not aware of. And one of the research has found out that even the high-end restaurants where you go to and you pay a big sum of money to eat the food, they also put different aliases of monosodium glutamate to improve the taste of the food. So that's the reason why the Canada Food Guide, based on that research, has advised that please cook at home, because when you cook at home, you know what's going in the food, and avoid any kind of processed food and any food which has been prepared outside. And of course, stabilizers are a big one. Also, the milk is full of stabilizers. You'll find carrageen in most of the milk, which is sold in the supermarkets. Food colors is another one. So, it's a little depressing when we look at the amount of things that's been altering the food industry and what we are consuming. But another interesting thing in food, the big thing is Hippocrates spent, he's the father of modern medicine, and he spent his life and he concluded that all diseases begin in the gut. So what is that? Another of my passion is the microbiome of the body. This is again my area of interest where I read a lot, and I find it very, very fascinating. The prediction is in the future, now, years from now, it's all microbiome manipulation is going to be the treatment for most of the diseases. Many diseases which were not curable previously, there's going to be a cure for them too. So it's one of the rays of big hope for the future of mankind. So now, what's the relationship of food, the microbiome, probiotics, and prebiotics? So, in fact, in my book, I've extensively gone to I'm combining and seeing how the modern research is discovering what the ancient people already knew. Because the ancient people from all over the world, they have been using these probiotics for years as a regular lifestyle. They would have it every day. And that's probably the reason why these underdeveloped ancient cultures, they still have good health, in spite of not having access to modern medicine. And so there's been a research explosion. If you see what is the microbiome, if you know, we are more bacteria than human. We have 10 times more cells, like I'm standing here. The amount of cells in my body, 10 times more cells are the microbes on my body. So these cells, they communicate with the genes of right from the brain to they communicate with the genes of the different parts of the body, different cells of the body, and they affect about 20,000 functions, and they make hundreds and thousands of biochemicals which have not yet been discovered, and they communicate with different genes all over the body. So like depression, all these things are linked to the microbiome. And there's tons and tons of research which is going on, and there's a lot of funding. In fact, the Human Microbiome Project has got more money than the Human Genome Project, and there's lots of research happening all over the world, and it's slowly pouring in, the research. So this is what the microbiome this is basically the history of probiotics. And if you know, Mitchell, if the person, he discovered that the Bulgarians had a lot of longevity and very good health. So he started researching them many years back, and he discovered that this longevity and good health is due to them drinking kefir. So he found out that kefir has about 27 friendly bacteria which affect the body in a very good way. And the Bulgarians, that's the reason why they were so healthy. They didn't have much cancer, they didn't have much heart disease. And these are the scientists who have worked on the probiotics and come out with it. Now, I can't go much in detail of the science, but let's send you home with some good information. So what kills the friendly bacteria? So what is bad for the bacteria is even bad for us too. Antibiotics, we all know, antibiotics kill the bacteria. We all may be thinking the biggest source of antibiotic is not the antibiotic course that you take for your disease or sickness. It's basically the antibiotics you get through the poor quality chicken and the meat which you are eating. That brings in antibiotics, and that destroys the microbiome. And then chlorine in water, chlorinated water is another thing which kills the friendly bacteria, pesticides and herbicides, the industrial chemicals, some food additives, stress. Now this is interesting, stress, inactivity and anger. Also exercise is known to destroy the microbiome and the friendly bacteria. Now, the new theory, they have researched that children who live in, this was very interesting, they compared the microbiome of small kids in Bangladesh from the poor slum areas, the poorest of poor, with the microbiome of the, American affluent kids from a good school. And they found that there was no diversity in the North American kids compared to them. And that's the reason is because they live dirty but eat clean in Bangladesh compared to what is happening in North America. You live clean but you eat dirty. And you have to avoid all these antibiotics and avoid genetically modified. So how can you help also the microbiome? Sugar is bad for the friendly bacteria because sugar causes an overgrowth of the fungus in the system. And this fungus is candida, which causes a lot of problems in the body, and it's responsible for a lot of conditions, including cancer. So, but if you eat loads of raw vegetable, raw plant-based diet is probably the best diet you can give your body. And you can have natural probiotic with every meal at the moment. And if you want, you can supplement also. If you can afford it, you can supplement with a good quality probiotic. But if you introduce probiotic naturally with every meal, that would be the ideal thing you can do for yourselves. Now, what are these ancient probiotics? All the ancient cultures, I told you, they have their magic potion of probiotic for centuries. They have been using it. The very fact they have survived this time is because it must have helped people over the years. So the Bulgarians have kefir, the Koreans have kimchi, the Chinese have their natto, Japanese have the natto and miso. Now Indian food, if I was researching, we have a ton of probiotics. It's actually with every meal we have lassi, yogurt, with every meal pickles and many, many drinks. The Mediterranean also have, in fact my book has a lot of recipe. All these recipes are there. You can prepare the probiotic at your home if you download the book, and I think that should help you. The Mediterranean also, people use a lot of probiotic. They have lemonade, they have pickled vegetables, and so many more. So now from knowledge to action, we have the 5 R's. We have to remove, we can replace, restore, retrain, and rehabilitate. What do we remove? I've already mentioned, remove the meat and the dairy and all the antibiotic-laden things. Try to go for and replace it with high quality, small portions of good quality meat and vegetables. Of course, try to replace it with as many greens as you can and be plant-based. Restore your microbiome with the help of the different supplements that you can add to your daily food, and retrain yourself to rehabilitate. So this is all I think I'm getting short of time. So you replace, and I've mentioned this, restore your microbiome. And you have to recognize that food is an addiction. Inactivity also is very much around. Stress management is something which we don't much pay attention to, but it is again very, very important for good health. It affects the health in a very bad way, and that's the reason why, the ancient practice of medicine, they always had a big part in the stress, managing stress. Emotional management is very important. And this mindful eating, we have kind of become insensitive and we are just eating mindlessly as well. So the 7 principles of ancient wisdom, this is again from the book. There are 7 principles. Eat whole food, plant-based meals, sack the sugar, eliminate the obesogens, that's all the chemicals from your food, supplement with probiotics, supplement with micronutrients, incorporate herbal supplements whenever you can, practice mindful eating, and it's nice to develop your own personalized action plan, because what is being discovered now, what may work for someone may not work for you. Now, nutritional advice in the future is going to be very different, because everyone has a different microbiome. They would need different kind of diets for that. So personalized nutrition, personalized healthcare is coming up. It's already being practiced in many centers. But you can have your microbiome, analyzed for a price, and then they will recommend what bacteria you need to supplement. That's also coming. People who can afford it are already using this personalized medical advanced things. But if you see, the interesting thing is Ayurveda already had this. When now every modern science is discovering it, but Ayurveda already described the body in different types, and every type was advised to eat a different kind of diet. So, but of course, I would like to, when I'm coming to the end, is, food is not enough. Exercise, sleep, emotional management, relationship management, very, very important, big one, because it leads to a lot of problems for a person, leads to a lot of stress and emotional distress, especially with the modern living. Environmental management, so these are very, very important things. Food is not enough. It has to be holistic as a whole person for all heart disease and for many conditions. You have to manage the whole situation. And personalized healthcare is going to come in a big way. Microbiome analysis I've spoken about. The genetic profile can be analyzed for a certain cost. Food sensitivities, again, are very important. Many people have a lot of food sensitivities. Probably the cause is the leaky gut, because leaky gut is also one of the conditions where your gut develops small pores and a lot of things enter the body, and then that's how one develops food sensitivities. So this is also very important. And to conclude, let food be thy medicine. It can be very powerful. You can definitely do it. And nowadays, with age of information, there's so much of good information in the internet which you can use to improve your health and the community's health. And I would like to thank you and open the floor for questions.
Got a question over here.
Kimchi, sauerkraut, and pickles that have been pickled have a common element, and that's vinegar. Do you recommend just taking vinegar by itself, and if so, what kind?
Yeah. You're asking whether you can take all of them together, or
no? Just about vinegar. Just is vinegar. What are the effects of vinegar, right?
Yeah, you can take kimchi and sauerkraut. And it's better to, the more different kind of food, functional food that you take, a variety of them, the better it will be for you. Did I answer?
Like, what are the benefits?
Yeah,
of vinegar?
Apple cider vinegar with the mother is one of the very good wonder, food. It's a probiotic, the apple cider vinegar. So you can take that, definitely.
I have a question.
I have one.
I just wanted to know the name of the book again. What's the name of the book?
The book is by the same name, actually. It's Applying Ancient Wisdom to Today's Food by Deepa Bhargava. If you do a Google search, you'll
I'll
get
help you with that. Okay. Oh, yes, go ahead.
I was once told by someone that because of the processed foods people are tending to consume on a regular basis, that it's taking our bodies 10 years to decompose after we pass away.
Very interesting. I didn't come across this one. That's news,
Yeah, someone from a medical profession told me that.
Yeah.
I believe it.
Yeah.
She will also be here in the expert panel at the end, so you can ask her questions then after you eat.
The milk thistle question. I can answer the question for milk thistle.
It's about
milk thistle is actually an excellent liver detoxifying herb. It has been shown to detoxify the liver, so it is recommended. And as you are taking many of the medications, they cause damage to the liver cells. Milk thistle in the mice model has shown that it can regenerate the liver cells, so it's good to take milk thistle.
We have a question back here.
Hi there. Can you help me understand canola oil? I understand that it's not one of the healthiest oils, but I've recently read that if it's cold or expressed, that it's recommended. And secondly, what mayonnaise do you buy? Because you cannot buy a mayonnaise without soybean, safflower, canola. They advertise extra virgin olive, but canola is the very first ingredient. And then lastly, I had a couple of questions. What's your intake on grass-fed beef here in Canada and grass-fed butter?
Okay, excellent question, because this is practical. Now, canola, what is canola? They have genetically modified a mustard seed to produce canola, and this canola doesn't have the smell of mustard. Unlike our Indian cooking, we use a lot of mustard oil. Like I cook my vegetables in mustard oil because I like the flavor and it's the original seed. Canola, they have refined it. Canada is one of the biggest producers of canola. And canola became very popular because it was helping the heart. They had shown, they were comparing the studies of canola with the saturated fat. And that's when they said canola is recommended, it's heart friendly, and it was recommended. But still now there is some research on most of the vegetable oils they are saying are not very good for the body, they're toxic. These are very powerful industries. When you go into research and you start analyzing, because as a part of my teaching career where I taught, I used to teach a program on evidence-based medicine and how to analyze research to see through the research and see what is truthful and what is not truthful. Because you'll be surprised, human beings love to fib, all of them, so, and especially when there's so much of money involved, and also a lot of research is also not very corrupted. But if you go on the net, you'll find some new studies which are, the integrative practitioners mostly, they say that the vegetable oils, they're not good. Now let me tell you what I do, because I love my salads, and I have recently, just about a few months back, I was a real carnivore. I would start my morning with bacon, and I used to do the high-fat diets, trying to lose weight, and I loved my meat. But I have just turned vegetarian recently, and I love my salads, and I like to put some mayo on my salads. So I make my mayo at home because I couldn't find any of the salad dressings which don't have sunflower oil and we want to have good virgin, extra virgin olive oil. And you can really use it and make your own mayo at home. And there is one brand I use mostly avocado oil in my mayo. And that you can, in fact, I found a bottle of avocado salad dressing or mayo, which you could find. I think Kraft has also come out with one. I don't know whether it's available here, but in US it's available. So you can have avocado oil, but it's easy to make mayo, very, very easy. It doesn't take very long. So if you bake a bottle of basic mayo and then use it for different kind of dressings, you can do the thing yourself. And as the Canada Food Guide has recommended, we should be cooking at home. You should not, buy the processed food. Try to eat as less processed food as you can, because it has a lot of health benefits. If you use avocado oil at the fraction of the cost, you can have a better quality stuff at home. And that answers your question.
Just your quick comment on grass-fed beef and grass-fed butter.
Yeah, grass-fed beef and grass-fed butter are definitely much better. They taste also better. And there's a big difference in the taste of both the things, because I personally, of course, now I've stopped eating the beef, but I know the difference in taste. But it's expensive, so I would recommend, but I would not buy beef after reading that consumer report. Actually, that report, when I read it, was one of the reasons I gave up my meat. And it was difficult initially, but, I gave it up because of this antidepressants and hormones. We don't know what all is going to the animals, and also grass-fed is definitely better, but it's expensive, grass-fed beef. So it's better.
We're going to take our last question over here, and again, she will be back in the expert panel at the end. We can ask more questions then. Okay, go ahead.
What's your view on olive oil, ghee, and coconut butter?
Oh, that's a nice one. Okay, now the new research on coconut oil, I was happy to, let me tell you my background. I personally had some problem when I was young. I was having infertility and I went for treatment. I know nothing would happen with me, and I wasn't successful in what treatments I was taking. So one of these Ayurveda camps I had gone into, that got me interested into it. If you go to the Ayurveda camp for a heart condition now also, the first thing they do is they make you drink ghee in the morning. They make you drink, literally a half a cup of ghee is given in the morning, every morning in the retreats. They have these retreats where you check into the retreat, and that's where you're treated. Now, actually, Oprah Winfrey and Deepak Chopra have come out with, they've copied the same model of Ayurveda from India, which is ancient. For years, we have been doing it. So ghee is recommended in Ayurveda, but I'm sure my brother-in-law will be angry with me, and he will say that, why are you, giving recommendation of saturated fats in your talk? But I'm sure the new evidence will come that ghee is very good for weight loss, diabetes, and heart health. So ghee is a good one. Coconut oil is another one. The research initially, actually also, as I told you, that there was a lot of, the food industry is probably, the research in the food industry, I think is full of biases, and it's been not a very clean industry. The research has not been very clean. Now it's all opening up, because now people are coming up when they're analyzing the conflict of interest. Who was doing the research on this? It was the canola industry who had financed the study. So naturally, there will be a big conflict of interest. But coconut oil, now the new research has shown that it's not too bad. That's also good. And extra virgin olive oil is very good. But olive oil, which is regular, that may have some pesticides and some kind of chemicals. So the three oils, I personally, in my family, I've started using ghee and avocado oil and extra virgin olive oil. Can only go in salad. You can't heat it. But avocado oil you can heat. And then you have coconut oil is excellent if you can tolerate the taste. So, but mostly the Western cooking, they don't like the flavor of coconut oil. It's good for us because Indians, we are used to eating coconut oil. So these are good according to me. That's my personal opinion, but I can't back it up with a lot of research at the moment. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Deepa. That was an amazing educational session. If you would like to hear more from Dr. Deepa, you can come to her next free seminar, which is Thursday, May the 30th at Dr. Bhargava's office in Oshawa. as part of our lecture series. So make sure as we head into our nutrition break that you sign up for the email list and that you grab a flyer with all the different lectures. So that concludes the morning of our educational day. The volunteers at Faith United Church have generously made us some food for the nutrition break. So I encourage you all to take time and do a bit of a stretch and grab some food. We're going to meet back in about 30 minutes. So at about 12:15, we will be starting the award presentation. Okay, go and enjoy, guys.